Hi, this is the AI Storyteller. I'm Mark. The book I will be interpreting for you in this issue is And Then There Were None. With a total sales volume of 1 billion copies, it is the best-selling detective novel of all time, a record maintained since its publication in 1939. The plot of the story is quite simple and can be summarized in one sentence. 10 strangers with different identities are invited to a gathering on an island, and one by one, they die following the sequence of a nursery rhyme called 10 Little Soldiers. The most eerie part is that the last person dies by suicide. In other words, the mastermind behind this deadly gathering remains unseen from beginning to end. While the story is easily summarized, the author, Agatha Christie, faced a significant challenge. In her previous works, readers could observe the case through the eyes of a detective, meaning all clues were fairly presented to both the readers and the detective. This style is known as fair play detective fiction. Readers of fair play detective fiction can even solve the case ahead of the detective, creating a sense of participation that adds to the allure of Christie's works. However, in And Then There Were None, there is no detective, and no one leads the collection of clues. So, how does one retain the charm of fair play detective fiction without a detective? Faced with this challenge, Christie demonstrated her complex and sophisticated writing technique. By constantly changing the narrative perspective, starting each section from the first-person viewpoint of each character, she provided readers with more information than ever before. As the novel progressed and more characters died, and fewer witnesses remained, the focal point of the novel subtly shifted, creating a sense of tension. With the death of the last person, the story concludes. Furthermore, And Then There Were None pioneered two classic models in detective fiction, the nursery rhyme murder and the island setting, establishing itself as an enduring masterpiece of classical detective fiction. To date, it has been adapted into over 20 television and film productions, and the eponymous play has been frequently performed for over 80 years. The author of this book, Agatha Christie, is rightfully hailed as the queen of detective novels. Born in 1890 in England, she published over 80 novels and scripts. According to Guinness World Records, Agatha Christie is the best-selling fiction writer of all time, surpassed only by the Bible and the works of William Shakespeare in total sales. Her works have been translated into over 100 languages, with total sales exceeding 2 billion copies. Starting with this book, I will continue to interpret Agatha Christie's classic works for you. Stay tuned. Next, I will explore 3 questions to delve into this story. Firstly, without a detective gathering clues, how did Christie masterfully handle a case involving 10 suspects? Secondly, how did the author use a nursery rhyme to create a murderous atmosphere, and what is the significance of the island setting? Finally, from a perspective of religious beliefs, let's examine how the author judges the morality of the murderer. The story unfolds in 1939 in London. 8 individuals each receive an invitation letter from different senders, inviting them to Soldier Island for an event. Christie's writing is exceptionally elaborate in this section, dividing the first chapter into 8 segments, each narrated from a different character's perspective. In approximately 1,000 words, each person presents their inner monologue, providing readers with densely packed information. All 8 letters invite the recipients to Soldier Island, and the reasons for the invitations vary, tailor-made to appeal to each recipient's desires. The sender's signature is scribbled and difficult to decipher, appearing to be something like UN. The tone and reasons for the invitations in these 8 letters are markedly different. For instance, the letter to the retired judge is written in a friendly tone, discussing old friendships and enjoying nature, acknowledging the judge's distinguished status. In contrast, the letter to the governess offers a job opportunity with a cold and indifferent tone, emphasizing her humble status and financial difficulties. The letter to an elderly nun is framed as a vacation among friends, away from modern life, hinting at the nun's conservative and old-fashioned personality. Among these 8 guests is also a detective, although in the story, the detective is not responsible for solving the case but merely a professional. On the way to the island, the detective encounters a talkative old man repeatedly saying, "The storm is coming and Judgment Day is near," which is actually a prophecy, but the detective dismisses it without much consideration. The ship arrived, and the guests discovered that Soldier Island was small, with only one white villa. A couple, the housekeepers, awaited them. The housekeeper assigned each of the 8 guests to their individual rooms, revealing a luxurious villa. Strangely, each room had a framed picture displaying an ancient and terrifying nursery rhyme. The rhyme went like this: 10 little soldiers, going out to dine, one choked his little self, and then there were 9. 9 little soldiers, staying up so late, one overslept himself, and then there were 8. The rhyme continued until 1, detailing the deaths of the soldiers in various ways, with the final one being, 1 little soldier, left all alone, he went and hanged himself, and then there were none. This 10 little soldiers rhyme introduced the concept of nursery rhyme murder, foreshadowing the murderer's plan and the process of the murders. Children enjoy repetition, and nursery rhymes serve an educational purpose of teaching counting, akin to reciting scriptures in storytelling. Agatha Christie chose this nursery rhyme for its natural countdown mechanism, forming a death list that gradually approaches. The tension created between the innocence of the rhyme and the terror of death is substantial. Now, back to the story. In her bedroom, the nun read a passage from the Bible. The wicked are ensnared by the work of their hands. The trouble they cause recoils on them. The Lord is known by his acts of justice. The wicked are ensnared by the work of their hands. The wicked go down to the realm of the dead, all the nations that forget God. This passage hinted at the murderer's intent to enact justice, ironically implying that the nun herself, being one of the wicked, would face such judgment. At 8 o'clock in the evening, the 8 guests gathered in the dining room. Strangely, just as the nursery rhyme predicted, there were 10 porcelain figurines on the table. Suddenly, a cold and merciless male voice filled the room, accusing each of the 10 people of their alleged crimes. The voice recited accusations, linking each person to a death, either directly or indirectly. The female housekeeper fainted upon hearing the recording. The guests demanded explanations from the housekeepers about the absent Owen couple. The male housekeeper claimed they had not seen the Owens, following instructions from the letters for meal preparation, room assignments, and even playing the recording, without their knowledge. Judging by the female housekeeper's reaction, it seemed they were telling the truth. Faced with the accusations from the voice, the judge utilized his legal skills, allowing each person to defend themselves in turn. Some vehemently justified their actions, while others admitted to their deeds with little remorse. The accusations included causing deaths indirectly or directly. The nun refused to speak, stating, "There's no defense issue. I have always acted with a clear conscience. I haven't done anything shameful." At this moment, the playboy who had admitted to running over 2 children suddenly turned purple, clutching his throat, and fell to the ground dead. The scene reminded everyone of the ominous rhyme on the wall: 10 little soldiers, going out to dine, one choked his little self, and then there were 9. The doctor examined the body and confirmed poison, cyanide, in the drink. Fearing for their lives, everyone decided not to eat or sleep that night. They agreed to leave the island by boat the next morning. The night was tense. The next verse of the nursery rhyme added to the unease: 9 little soldiers, staying up so late, one overslept himself, and then there were 8. Everyone was reluctant to sleep, fearing that unconsciousness might be even more dangerous. So, they endured the night in the living room. Early the next morning, they found that the female housekeeper who had fainted the night before had died. With 2 deaths in a row, it became evident that this was not just a gathering but a premeditated, carefully planned series of murders. Fortunately, the morning boat was due. However, dark clouds loomed, and the expected boat was delayed. A storm was approaching. Thus, the remaining 8 people found themselves trapped on the island. 8 people were trapped on the deserted island, bringing us to the island mode. And then there were none pioneered the island mode. The term refers to an isolated setting, whether it be an island or extreme weather conditions like a snowstorm or torrential rain, creating a natural locked room scenario. This confines a group of strangers, suspicious of each other, to a space from which escape is impossible. Meanwhile, these individuals start dying one by one, and the murderer is among them. The horror of the island mode lies in the absence of law enforcement. It's a lawless territory where we are isolated from societal rules, a place without legal systems or justice. Anyone could kill anyone. Now, let's return to the story and take a closer look at the 8 individuals who are currently alive on the island. The first person is a lady hired as a secretary on the island with a high salary. She is accused of indirectly murdering her student, with the motive of securing an inheritance for her beloved. The second person is a male butler who has recently lost his wife. The voice accuses this couple of conspiring to murder their former employer, aiming to gain an inheritance. The third person is a tall and handsome mercenary in his 20s. The voice accuses the mercenary of causing the death of 21 locals during a mission in Africa. The fourth person is a doctor in his 40s who, due to alcohol, caused a patient's death during a seemingly simple surgery. The fifth person is a retired judge in his 60s. The voice accuses the judge of using his authority to unjustly kill an innocent defendant out of personal vendetta. The sixth person is a general who participated in World War I. The general is accused because he discovered love letters between his wife and a subordinate, leading him to arrange a mission that would inevitably result in the subordinate's death. The seventh person is a highly conservative nun. Her maid, unmarried and pregnant, committed suicide by lying on the tracks due to the nun's humiliation, resulting in 2 deaths. The eighth person is a detective who, after accepting a bribe, provided false testimony, causing an innocent defendant to die in prison. We find that all 8 individuals directly or indirectly took lives, and for various reasons, their crimes were not legally prosecuted, preventing them from facing the consequences of imprisonment or execution. All 8 individuals had directly or indirectly caused deaths, yet their crimes went unpunished for various reasons, allowing them to escape legal consequences. The survivors conducted a comprehensive search of the entire island, finding no one else, indicating that the murderer was among them. Subsequently, the general was bludgeoned to death with a blunt instrument, and the male housekeeper was hacked to death in the kitchen, with shattered porcelain figurines around him, corresponding to 7 little soldiers, chopping up sticks. 1 chopped himself in halves, and then there were 6. The nun was killed with a syringe disguised as a bee sting, echoing 6 little soldiers, playing with a hive. A bumblebee stung one, and then there were 5. Now the remaining 5 are the doctor, the judge, the female secretary, the mercenary, and the detective. Analyzing the situation, they concluded that the previous victims were targeted for being alone. They decided to stay in the living room, keeping everyone in sight to avoid further murders and being murdered. After sitting for a day, it became night, and the secretary, needing to use the restroom, experienced a fright. In the chaos, they discovered that the judge was missing. When they found him, his corpse sat upright in a chair in his room, with a bullet hole in his forehead, resembling a courtroom trial. 5 little soldiers studying law galore, 1 got in chancery, and then there were 4. Now the remaining 4 are the mercenary Philip, the secretary Vera, the detective Bloor, and the Dr. Armstrong. During the night, Bloor heard footsteps outside his room. Opening the door cautiously, he saw Dr. Armstrong sneaking out alone. Bloor woke up Philip and Vera to share the information, and the 3 suspected Dr. Armstrong to be the killer. However, a storm was raging outside, and the 3 could only return to their rooms, locking the doors until dawn. At this point, let's pause. As the case unfolds, the various personalities of the guests are laid bare. Different events trigger different reactions among them. We can observe, under Agatha Christie's pen, the secretary Vera is intelligent and cautious in guiding conversations, the judge is worldly wise, the mercenary Philip is cynical and finds the death game stimulating, and the Dr. Armstrong is careful and cautious. For instance, from the beginning, the nun refuses to defend herself alongside others, revealing her integrity and stubbornness. Now, let's resume the story. Early the next morning, Vera, Philip, and Bloor gathered in the living room to assess the weather outside. The good news was that the storm had subsided, and the sea had calmed down, but would the boat arrive? Philip and Vera waited at the door for the boat, secretly harboring affection for each other. Suddenly, they heard a loud noise from the adjacent room. Detective Bloor had been killed by a large marble statue. However, the nursery rhyme stated, "For little soldiers, going out to sea, a red herring swallowed one, and then there were 3. There was a discrepancy between reality and the nursery rhyme's description. Did the killer make a mistake? Mercenary Philip and Secretary Vera both believed that the missing doctor was the killer. Suddenly, they saw something washed up on the beach. Upon closer inspection, they discovered it was the doctor's bloated body. Overwhelmed with grief, Vera asked Philip for help in dragging the doctor's body ashore and arranging it properly. Philip, realizing that his gun, which had been hanging at his waist, was missing, learned that Vera had taken it, convinced he was the murderer. Seizing the opportunity of dragging the body, she had secretly stolen the gun. Philip attempted to reclaim the gun, but Vera shot and killed him. After eliminating the perceived threat, Vera, exhausted, returned to the mansion alone. Upon seeing 3 porcelain figures on the table, she smiled with relief, realizing that everyone was dead. In this deadly game, she had won. Consequently, she smashed 2 porcelain figures, holding the one representing her, saying, "We've won, my dear. Come with me, we've won." However, upon entering the house, she looked up and was shocked to find a rope hanging from the ceiling, forming a noose at its base, evidently prepared for her hanging. Vera suddenly recalled the last line of the nursery rhyme, "One little soldier, left all alone. He went and hanged himself, and then there were none." In a daze, she began to recollect her past crimes. Several years ago, she had fallen in love with a young man named Hugo, and her love for him persisted. However, Hugo, being impoverished, was hesitant to propose. If his nephew died, the inheritance would go to Hugo. Coincidentally, Vera was the private tutor for the young nephew. She encouraged the boy to swim far into the sea, and he drowned. Hugo, realizing Vera's involvement in the nephew's death and understanding that Vera had caused the boy's death for him, left Vera in disappointment and pain. Throughout the years, Vera could not forget the disappointed gaze of Hugo. In the midst of painful memories, Vera walked to the noose, kicked over a chair, and hanged herself. The porcelain figure representing her rolled and shattered. Thus, on the entire island of 10 people, no one survived. Days later, the police arrived and found an inexplicable crime scene, 10 bodies scattered in different rooms, each killed differently, without leaving any clues about the murderer. The story ends here, offering you the opportunity to experience the authentic detective genre. Now, guess who the killer is? You might find it strange since, in theory, the last one who dies should be the killer. However, Vera, who died last, committed suicide. You might argue that Vera killed herself out of remorse, but this suicide was not intentional. After Vera returned to the house, she saw the noose used for hanging. She understood that the killer hadn't died, and they were still in the mansion. Vera, like the mercenary Philip she had just shot, was also a victim, not the murderer. Now, with the noose in front of her, she knew that even if she didn't commit suicide, the killer hiding in the house would kill her. So, who killed them in the end? The final chapter of the novel unveils this mystery. A fisherman near the island found a drifting bottle in the sea. Inside, the killer had personally written a confession of the murders. As it turns out, the murderer was the venerable Judge Wargrave. The problem is, didn't the judge die halfway through? Next, I will narrate the story again from the perspective of the killer, Judge Wargrave, so you'll understand. As a judge, Wargrave was highly just. He realized there was a moral vacuum between law and ethics, and many people, in his eyes, were guilty. They had directly or indirectly taken others' lives, morally culpable but legally innocent, escaping legal repercussions. He wished to bring all these guilty individuals to justice. Moreover, Wargrave recently discovered he had cancer, with little time left. He decided to let all those he considered guilty pay with their lives. He chose these 9 people, each with a share of blood on their hands but untouched by the law, and meticulously planned a perfect murder. He intended for each person to die in fear, one by one, in the order the nursery rhyme dictated. Additionally, he wanted the police to have no leads in solving the case. Wargrave spent a large sum to acquire Soldier Island. He speculated on the interests that might attract the 10 individuals and used the fictional characters, the Owen couple, to lure them to the island through letters. On the first evening, Wargrave poisoned the playboy and the housemaid, then proceeded to kill the rest one by one whenever they were alone. However, as the number of people dwindled, the killings became increasingly challenging. So, Wargrave convinced Dr. Armstrong to fabricate a death scene for him. The scene where Judge Wargrave, seemingly shot in the head, was dead in the chair was, in fact, a result of the doctor's makeup artistry. The deceased judge gained freedom of movement. However, why did Dr. Armstrong believe Wargrave? The doctor wasn't easily deceived. He had always been cautious. But at the same time, he was an opportunist, and his caution was blind. He trusted in authority, believing that a powerful judge like Wargrave could not be a bad person. After everyone moved the body of the judge, Wargrave rose again and met with the doctor outside the mansion to discuss their strategy. So when Vera saw the doctor sneak out at night, he was actually meeting the judge. As we know now, the doctor paid the price for his misjudgment. When Wargrave saw the doctor, he pushed him off the cliff. The doctor fell to his death, and his body washed into the sea. The judge returned to the mansion and concealed himself, using a marble statue to kill the detective. At this point, only 2 people remained. Wargrave, looking through the mansion window, witnessed Vera shooting the mercenary Philip. Then, the judge entered Vera's room, prepared the hanging noose, and hid in the wardrobe. If Vera did not commit suicide upon entering, he would step out and kill her. After everyone was dead, Judge Wargrave set up a rubber band mechanism on the gun. This mechanism caused the gun to bounce to the other side of the table when the trigger was pulled. When the police arrived, what they saw was that the judge was killed by someone on the other side of the table. Thus, Judge Wargrave both punished those he deemed evil and left what he considered a perfect crime scene. Yes, the last person did indeed commit suicide, but it was not Vera, the secretary, who hanged herself. It was the judge himself. Agatha Christie was a writer with a strong sense of morality. Her moral perspective was that if someone committed a crime, they would ultimately face judgment. However, if a person killed for kindness and justice, there was a possibility of forgiveness. This theme can be observed in her other works, such as Murder on the Orient Express. If you've read this novel or watched the movie, you would understand this perspective. From this angle, Judge Wargrave is Agatha's spokesperson for morality, acting as both the judge presiding over the trial process and the executioner carrying out death sentences for the guilty. Let's take a closer look at the sins of these guests. The playboy seems to have accidentally killed 2 children, not deserving death, but he not only denies his crime but also shifts the responsibility for revoking his license to the deceased, continuing to speed after escaping legal consequences. The butler couple seems to be unable to rescue their master in time, but they deliberately delayed to inherit the master's fortune, ultimately causing the master's death, making them extortionists. The doctor seems to be unlucky, encountering a terminally ill patient, not deserving death, but he was intoxicated while practicing medicine, neglecting his duties. The mercenary's actions in the forest seemed to be for survival, seemingly with no choice, but he betrayed his companions, took away all the remaining food, and believed that African lives were not worth saving, a racist and colonialist. Secretary Vera seems to have failed in her rescue, not saving her student in the end, but she actually encouraged her nephew to swim in dangerous waters, sacrificing a child's life to the sea for her lover's inheritance. The general appears to have made a tactical mistake, causing his subordinate to die on the battlefield, but it was out of revenge against a romantic rival, abusing his authority. The nun, to preserve her reputation, drove away the pregnant maid, showing her selfish and inhumane side. The detective claimed to conduct impartial investigations but falsified evidence for personal gain, causing the death of an innocent person. In reality, Christie used "and then there were none" to discuss an ethical issue, the problem of justice being difficult to assert. She urged readers to re-examine the boundary between morality and law, focusing on the reality of victims falsely accused with nowhere to appeal. In this sense, Christie is not affirming Judge Wargrave as a judge who kills the wicked. On the one hand, the judge is the person judging the evil, representing the author. On the other hand, he is the person Christie deems most guilty. The true sin of the judge lies in the fact that, even after his retirement, he continued to perceive himself as the embodiment of earthly justice and reveled in passing judgment on others. Why is this considered a heinous act? This brings us to the belief of Agatha Christie, who was a Christian. In the Bible, there is a group of people known as the Pharisees. They were legal experts among the Jews, possessing knowledge about the rituals and moral doctrines of Judaism. The Pharisees considered themselves righteous, viewing themselves as spokespersons of the truth. While they disciplined the lives of ordinary believers, they sought wealth and status through their knowledge, attempting to become earthly gods. With this background, it becomes clear that Judge Wargrave is a thorough Pharisee. Jesus considered the Pharisees to be exceptionally sinful, even surpassing the murderous thugs in heinousness. He referred to the Pharisees as brood of vipers. According to Christian moral standards, self-perceived intelligence and the unauthorized judgment of other sins are the fundamental sins among the 7 deadly sins. Pride. Reflecting on the novel's beginning, where the nun read from the Bible in her room, "The Lord has made himself known, he has executed judgment. The wicked are ensnared by the work of their hands. The wicked shall return to Sheol." Individuals like Judge Wargrave, who perceive themselves as the Lord, as gods, passing judgment on others, are considered more heinous than those who evade justice for taking lives. They are the epitome of evil. Well, that concludes the content for this episode. If you enjoyed my video, please click like, subscribe to my channel, and share it with your friends. Thank you.